Tacoma, it is so good to be here this morning, afternoon, wherever we are right now. I'm sure that there is a place on the globe where it's morning. So good morning to you. But for most of us in the U.S., it's afternoon. So good afternoon. It's funny that I can't figure out if it's morning or afternoon because I'm telling you, my watch has been so concerned about my being on time today. It's like the calendar thing has been like going off like 3 times. It's like maybe I set some thing on it. I don't know. But it's good to be here. You are joining me, Scott Willard, for the Congruence podcast. Congruence, where faith and life come together. And last week, I shared some life with you. This week, I want to share some life with you. Yeah. And life is sometimes awesome, and there's lots to celebrate and to laugh about. And then there are other times that life is not so wonderful. And the beauty of congruence is that you don't pretend, you just be. And there's a bit of relief in that, right? And the other word that comes to mind as I say that is release. There's a release in it as well, because you're not having to hold on to it. You can just be. So I'm excited to talk to you today about congruence. I do want to just put out a shout out for BD Local. And if you want to support the shows at BD Local, you want to support this show in particular, I just want to invite you to call Timothy or Sadie at BD Local. You can reach them at 253-241-9268. 253-241-9268. 9268. Because there are some of you out there that want to, all right? You have already spent all of your money supporting your political party of choice, all of the politicians you want to vote for, and now you want to invest in something that is truly local. And if you want to contribute to the voice of Tacoma and local stories, local business, local issues, local stuff, BD Local. It's who we are. So give us a call, and we'd appreciate your support. So I'm rocking a Raz Cranberry LaCroix today. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. LaCroix, I don't know. Actually, sometimes that's what it tastes like. Is blech. But we'll just go with LaCroix today, and we'll see what this tastes like. It's my very first one. You're joining me today for the very first taste of a Raz Cranberry LaCroix. All right, here we go. Well, there is definitely some cranberry flavor to this. And a little bit of raz going on in the back of my tongue, that kind of bubbly thing that happens. So I guess it's true to advertising. It is Raz Cranberry. So there you go. You ever have those days? I mean, we used to joke about it, right? So you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You get up growly. You stumble over the dog. Maybe you kick the dog. My excuse is I stumbled over the dog, okay? I'm sticking with it. You get downstairs and you go barefoot for some reason instead of your slippers, and thank God you did, because you step in some cat stuff on the way through the living room, and it takes you 4 tries to actually track it all down because you also forgot to wear your glasses when you went downstairs. And so, you got this weird sliminess on your feet and you're like, ugh, and you're like trying to clean that up. And then you got the stuff on the carpet, and then you got the stuff on the floor, and you're just so stinking frustrated. And what just makes it even worse is that the cats, it's like cats have like no shame, right? They truly have no shame. The same cats that you just walked through their stuff that they couldn't have been polite enough to clean up by themselves. Those same cats are like right in front of the refrigerator going, dude, it's time for some cream. We would like our cream, please. And no, we're not going to get out of your way so that you can make coffee until you take care of our cream. Where's our cream? No, cream. Hey, you up there, cream. Cream, please. Hello, cream. Cream, please. I mean, obnoxious, right? Well, Sunday was kind of one of those days, and it was one of those laughable days, all right? It was laughable because there's nothing worse than being cranky on your way to church. There's something about that just cracks me up. It's like, how perfect is that, right? I mean, you're all growly and irritable, and you put it together long enough to go into church, and it's like, it's just this opportunity just to take this deep breath and let it go. And you leave, and you feel like you're supercharged for at least 10 to 15 minutes until all of a sudden somebody cuts you off. And then it's all right back. And you just forgot how awesome it was to have that experience, right? So Sundays being cranky are kind of my favorite, just because they're bordering on laughable. Well, so Sunday, we're sitting in church, and we've been, as I mentioned, we've been visiting different churches, and we've been hanging out lately at Fox Island Alliance. And the pastor Josh this week was talking about growing. And he had all of these steps on how we as Christ followers grow. I thought it was really interesting that they all start with an S, even though he didn't mention it one time. It's just always funny. It's something like pastors, I think, spend most of their time working on finding either, these funny words to say that they make up with, those acronyms, and they all spell the different things that you're going to study, or else they try to find words that all start with the same letter, something that makes it easier for you to absorb as a listener. So he comes up with all three of these things about how to grow as a Christ follower. And so we went through these, and it was spiritual gifts are the first one, steadfastness and commitment, suffering and endurance. And about there, I scratched on the bottom of my note page and it said lots of growth potential. And I showed that to Holly, and she laughed just a little bit, not loudly, because that would have completely interrupted the service. But she chuckled, and it's like growth opportunities. Relationships are that for us, aren't they? They are growth opportunities. I mean, when you think about, I'm going to go through these real quick. When you think about spiritual gifts, what are they for? They're really to be used for the community of believers and for the neighborhood, the constellation of people that you interact with. So relational, steadfastness and commitment. Where do most of us get to exercise commitment? It's relationships. Suffering and endurance. All right, you may not want to look at the other person when you say this, but sometimes it's in relationships, right? I mean, you just kind of, it's like some days are great and they're awesome and they give you the energy and the momentum to cope with days that are not. And unfortunately, sometimes we have more of the suffering than not. But It's also that, when we're truly suffering, when we're suffering with physical issues, pain, illness, when we're suffering with emotional issues, results of trauma, or psychiatric issues, or just hurting. It's so much easier to walk through suffering and endurance relationally when you're with other people that care about you. The other one that he came up with was stretching. That, we have to stretch. We can't just sit in our comfort zone. And I've talked about this in the past, that true growth does not happen without a bit of discomfort. If it wasn't for discomfort, why would we grow? Why would we improve? The next one was studying, showing yourself to be approved through our studying. I think that's 2 Timothy 2:15. Not as relational as the others. But the next one is submission. Submitting ourselves to each other, submitting ourselves to God, truly accepting that God is God and we're not. I'm not sure that there's a greater mark of maturity than submission. And then we come to this next one. I want to spend a little bit of time unpacking it. Ways that we grow: silence, solitude, stillness, and Sabbath. Can you imagine how we do that in relationship? In community? It's difficult enough to do that individually, but to embrace silence and solitude when you're in community, when you're with others, is a challenge. And the last one that he had, ways that we grow as Christ followers, is sanctification. Just that real hardcore setting ourselves apart. And so we talked about that Sunday, and like I said, I'm writing in my margin a chuckle that that relationships and me especially, I'm a great growth opportunity. That's what I am. I'm a walking growth opportunity. And so Sunday was one of those days. And then today ended up being one of those days. And man, it was one of those awkward ones too, because like you get to the other side of your irritation, and most of you out there that are in relationships can probably identify with this. So you send a text or an email or something like that to the one that you care about, kind of creating an opportunity to, resolve and kind of put a placeholder in the desire to want to resolve and make things okay, so that when you get together, you've already laid some groundwork, and so that they're not hanging all day with believing that you're angry and upset, and oftentimes with them, right? So we do this, and all of a sudden, guess what we figure out? It's like, oh God, it's like the perfect storm. So we have this email exchange or this text message exchange, and then we discover that my youngest son's new bride is on this text message exchange. That whichever one of us started the text message exchange accidentally used a group text. And it's like, oh my God. And it's just one of those funny things, right? And Holly was kind of funny. She's like, oh, just noticed that you were involved in this text, this group text, and hopefully we have done a decent job of modeling for you how you resolve conflicts. And bless her heart, Morgan was very gracious and said, yes, thank you. That was very good. Good job. So there you go. I don't know where I'm going from there, except just to say that when you're in relationship, I think that sometimes growth has the potential to happen faster than when you're by yourself, because you have other people in your life, other people that can hold you accountable, that can like call you on your stuff, and other people that give you opportunities to practice growth opportunities, right? Because like I said, I'm a living, breathing growth opportunity. But here's the thing, so are you. All of us are growth opportunities for someone. And when we're looking to make change, it is really weird that sometimes the things that aggravate us the most about others are the things that, in point of fact, are the things that aggravate us the most about ourselves. Like when you're in that quiet space and you're just left alone in your head. If you're really honest, the things that irritate you about the people that irritate you the most are also the things that irritate you about yourself. And you don't really have a way to exercise those muscles to grow if you are not in relationship, if you're not encountering people that are challenging to you. Just something to think about. All right. So just a real quick recap for those of you that like notes and stuff like that. From Josh last Sunday. Ways that we grow as Christ followers by practicing our spiritual gifts, right? By being steadfast, by making commitments. The act of making and sticking commitments is a way that we grow spiritually. Suffering, practicing endurance, stretching, right? Utilizing our faith, stretching, studying, the exercise of growing our minds, our hearts, and our faith, studying to show ourselves approved. Submission, being submissive to each other, but especially being submissive to God. That God is God and we are not. And then silence, solitude, stillness, and Sabbath. And lastly, sanctification. Ways that you grow in your faith, ways that you grow as a Christ follower. I have been on this pursuit. I've talked about it the last few weeks. I'm making progress. I'm very happy about that. Of being able to identify the things in my life that really matter, and being able to organize my life in a way that allows for me to attend to those, right? So I've been doing these morning journaling exercises, and in those exercises, just really paying attention to how I spent my time the day before. And by just being really brutally honest about how I spent my time the day before and not judging myself, right? Because sometimes I think that when we get critical of ourselves, when we judge ourselves, what we tend to do without really meaning to is actually lock in a behavior and to lock in a judgment. And when you take a behavior and you take a value assignment and you put those together and you lock onto that, really, really hard to move away from it. So instead, when you just simply notice something, and then you call it what it is, and really try not to judge it as good or bad, to simply accept it as is. Once you've done that, it reduces some of the energy, it reduces some of the power that you may have assigned to that behavior. So I've been working on that, and I've been identifying these things, and I recognized something. I don't think I talked about this last week. I recognized that, when you talk about priorities and you put them in the context of what are those things that are sacred to you, things that if they were not a part of your life, you would truly, truly miss. Those things have such value to you, right? So my relationship with Holly is one of those values. My runs, when I get out and I stretch my body and I move muscles and I'm breathing air and I'm going for a run, it's something that I could not live without. And as I was contemplating this, I recognized that there was this weird emptiness. And when I say weird, I'm not kidding. It is weird. I recognized that there was a quality to my trail runs back when I lived in Central Oregon, right? So I don't know if you know anything about Central Oregon. It is high desert. It's a little bit like being on the east side of the mountains here in Washington, but geographically it feels so different because of the wildlife and the nature. So where I was sitting right around 4,000 feet above the ocean, just at the foot of the Cascades. And when you're running trails in the woods, there is a sense of wildness to it because they're primitive. I mean, they're game trails that lots of people walked on and stirred up. And there was something that really was spiritual to me about being in those woods, in the Deschutes National Forest, listening, right? And you'd go and you'd run and you wouldn't have your earbuds in. You'd just be listening to the quiet, the stillness. You'd hear the birds. You'd hear the wind in the trees. You'd hear your breathing. And let me tell you, when I'm running, you hear some breathing. You hear the footfalls. You see the dust that gets kicked up. You see the footprints that you leave in the soil. And there was something sacred and magical to me about that I just haven't experienced here. You know, I go out to Point Defiance and I go for a run, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's magical in its own way, right? I mean, 2 out of the last 3 times that I've been to Point Defiance, I've ran up on deer. It's just been beautiful to see them. This morning I went for a run, and this massive raccoon is just kind of meandering across the trail, looking at me like, what do you want? So it's natural, but there's a sense of wildness that is not there because you know that it's so man-made. Those trails are so groomed and man-made. And there's something about it. I don't feel like I'm leaving footprints. And what I discovered as I was contemplating this, I just got fixated on this notion of leaving footprints, of trailblazing, of leaving evidence of my being there. And as I was thinking about this whole idea of silence and solitude and stillness and Sabbath, it's not that it's about a lack of activity. It's not like you're just sitting still necessarily. There is a journey that you are on as a Christ follower, as you are resting. There is a powerful thing that happens when you rest. As a Christ follower, there's this thing that happens because as you rest, as you embrace the solitude and the silence and the stillness of the world around you, you're so much more able to tap into the activity of God around you. It's that old notion of, if you really want to get somewhere fast, slow down. Because when you slow down and you focus, you're able to get somewhere that you didn't believe that you're able to get to before. And as a Christ follower, when you slow down and you're quiet and you are resting in the stillness and the solitude, you're able to recognize the activity of God around you, in you and around you. And there's an invitation that comes for you to embrace that. And I think that it's when you embrace it and you accept that invitation That's when you make those footprints in the wilderness. I want to encourage you as you go through this week, find those opportunities for stillness and solitude. Test me out on this. See if you don't encounter what God is doing in you and around you. Make some tracks by accepting the invitation to walk alongside of Jesus, to allow His Spirit to guide you on your journey. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that this has been a helpful message to you. Sharing life, the good, the bad, sometimes the ugly, sometimes the raspberry fizzy of life that is great sometimes, and other times is just what it is. But at all times is real. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye now.